Guys, so I have some announcements to make. If you don't want to hear them, then skip to whenever. I don't really know. Okay, so first announcement, as you guys probably know, it is the 4-year anniversary of January 6th. So I thought should make a Senate prediction, not just because the Senate, because 4 years ago we did determine who would control the United States Senate. So it's I guess it's kind of fitting to do it now. Happy 4 years since that. Thank God we had a normal proceeding through certification. Thank God we did not want another January 6th to happen ever again. Hopefully, we can put that all behind us. Account. Oh, yeah, I can log in. That's cool. Okay, next announcement. So I made a community poll, but like one person answered it. So I'm thinking, what if I do a little bit more research on Canadian politics and then I can do a little few election predictions? This will probably still be an American politic focused channel, but I was just thinking with all the drama around Justin Trudeau. It'd be kind of cool if I decided to make something about Canadian politics. It's kind of weird because I am American, and three people voted against it. So, I'm low key gonna go. Um, maybe I should. Why does no one want to, guys? Come on. Um, so it's that. Okay. Well, also, next announcement. My fun announcement. So I took my Spanish final a few weeks ago, right? And it was finally graded today. And I got an 89.5 out of 90, which is a 99.4%, meaning I got a 99% on my Spanish final. And I'm really happy about that because I was studying so hard for it and I thought I was gonna fail because somehow I thought I was gonna fail because I only didn't know one question. But yeah, I think I did decent on that because I know what answer I got wrong. And overall, I think I did a good job because I had to make up my oral exam pretty much in front of the entire class. So that was a little scary. But I guess I got 100 on that part too. So very happy about that. And now, enough about that. Let's get on to the video because you guys came to listen to this. You guys are not come to listen about my personal life. Okay, so 2026 Senate. Republicans, they have the majority. They flipped seats in Montana, West Virginia, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. And we see Montana, Ohio, and West Virginia have Senate races up, but none in Pennsylvania this cycle. However, we do have one in Michigan. So we take a look at the toss-up races. Can take a look at what races I do think will be the most competitive. What is this? Looks like an update. That's kind of cool. Okay, we take a look at the quote-unquote toss-ups. Colorado-ish toss-up, New Mexico, more battleground than toss-up, Minnesota, Michigan, Iowa, Texas, Florida, Georgia, North Carolina, regular Virginia, Ohio, New Jersey, and then Mex New Hampshire. So every battleground is built differently. Like you'll have some states that are definitely more competitive than others. So we see here, as I'm categorizing all the other states, there are really only four competitive seats in Michigan, Maine, Georgia, and North Carolina. Make this a little so we can actually see the difference. So these four seats, the most important of the entire Senate race, however, these seats will not determine who has control of the Senate. Republicans, they've gone into this with a very commanding majority in the United States Senate. So if we take a look at the results from the Senate race, Democrats should be lucky it did not go any worse for them. So Michigan, we take a look at Michigan. It was a Democratic plus 0.3% victory. So let's say those two states had gone for the Republican Party. Democrats would have basically been kicked out of the Senate majority. So we take a look at the map. We fill it all out. North Carolina, Tennessee, Kentucky. No, not Virginia. Two special elections in Ohio. So we see Republicans just carrying all the seats that they currently have that are not competitive. They're at 52 already. And we take a look at Democrats. So they're at 48 if we add an extra seat to that's okay. This is the current delegation. Republicans at 43, Democrats at 47. Let's say they flip Maine and North Carolina, their easiest flip targets. Hold on to Michigan, hold on to Georgia. So they need two more seats to win. And we take a look at the president map. We take a look at that. Ohio. Ohio's the next best state, honestly. Democrats have decent candidates. So let's say to flip Ohio. This is JD Vance's old seat, so I find that really ironic if that flips it to Democrats. It's a 50-50 delegation. So what seat flips next? Well, you might be thinking Iowa or Texas or Florida, right? Texas was a 13.7 margin, Florida was a 13.1 margin, and Iowa was a 13.2 margin. But that's actually not the state I think would be the next most likely to flip. I think it's the state of Alaska, which was a 13.1 margin. It is the same as Florida, but Florida is weird because Florida's an interesting state because Democrats are pretty much locked out for the entire future. They have one decent candidate in Jaron Moskowitz who underperformed his races quite like 10-ish point margins each time. Then you have Alaska with a bunch of very decent candidates. You could have Nick Begich, you have Mark Begich. No, Mark Begich is a Republican, never mind. Nick Begich, who used to serve, I do believe it was the seat. So if he runs again, maybe if he wants to. You have Mary Patola, which if she runs, this race can get really competitive. Or if they want a primary out, Dan Sullivan. Alaska is more likely to flip than Texas, Florida, and Iowa, which is very interesting when you put it into perspective how badly Democrats did. And if we actually take a look, let's say Republicans, um, we can take a look back at this Senate race map. Democrats, let's say Republicans, they had won. This is their dream scenario. Wisconsin and Michigan. Wisconsin and Michigan, we take a look at that. If Wisconsin and Michigan had gone red, Democrats would have needed North Carolina, Maine, Ohio, and Alaska. But remember, this is actually 51. And then they would need either Iowa, Texas, or Florida, one of those states, which truly baffling if you think about how close Democrats came to the brink of actual disaster. And then let's say Nevada, which is only a 1 point margin, goes to the Republicans. And then let's say they nominated another decent candidate in Arizona. So 57 seats. Democrats would need to flip 8 seats in the United States Senate to regain the majority. Let's say they win Maine, they win North Carolina, they have to win. Now, but let's just say they carry these two states. So they've already flipped 4. They need to carry all 7 of these states, and they still won't have the majority. Put that into perspective. How dangerously close the Democrats came to absolute burning. Okay, I repeated myself 20 times, so let's get started with the video. Okay, clear. Democratic safe states. I think their safe states will be Oregon, Illinois. I'm gonna add Colorado to the safe column because John Hickenlooper, he won by 9 against incumbent. So he did underperform Joe Biden. He only won by 9.3. Joe Biden won by 13.5. But this was against Cory Gardner, who did win his race in 2014. On the same ticket, John Hickenlooper won his governor bid. So it's interesting. Okay. And then Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Delaware. Do I want to put any other states in the safe column? I'm not. Republicans, they'll have Idaho, Wyoming, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi. Well, do I want to put Mississippi in the safe column? No, I don't think I'm gonna put. I don't know if Kansas in the safe column either. Alabama, unless Doug Jones runs again, even then I think he loses by at least 20%. Tennessee, Kentucky, unless Andy Bashir runs, it could get decently competitive. West Virginia, and that already puts Republicans at 42 seats, Democrats at 40. So let's talk about all these likely states. Democratic likely states, I think New Mexico, Minnesota, Virginia, New Jersey, and then New Hampshire. I think they all are likely Democratic states. Marginally speaking, Minnesota was a 5.2% margin. Virginia was a 12.1% margin, but this was 2020. Um, we take a look here. Congressional districts. Um, Mark Warner, he did very good in the state. He won by 12. But we're probably not going to see, especially since the margin of victory Kamala Harris won was halved of what Joe Biden won by. We're probably not going to see a half, but I could say 10%, 10 to 12-ish percent, nothing more than 13 though. 45 to 42. New Jersey is getting competitive. Booker, he won by 16. I think the margin could get narrower. Passaic County, Morris County. We see he also received the most votes for a Democrat in a non-presidential election in history. Probably won't happen again. 2026, we don't really see any candidate that tried to run. New Hampshire. So New Hampshire is very interesting because we take a look. We can't even look in New Hampshire. We have to look in Massachusetts. Hang on, if I can find the thing. So in, hang on, what class is Elizabeth? What ticket was Elizabeth Warren elected on? What the heck? Okay, well, there was a special election in Massachusetts, if this would actually. Okay, so in 2010, there was a special election. Scott Brown defeated Martha Coakley. Very, very surprising, honestly, election. Won the race, then lost to Elizabeth Warren in 2012. This was a pretty expensive race, and it was actually decently competitive. Then in 2014, because God forbid Scott Brown decides to run in multiple states, he ran in the state of New Hampshire against Jeanne Shaheen. Pretty competitive-ish state. And I say competitive-ish because not really. It was 2014. Republicans should have won. Then Jeanne Shaheen beat some guy who doesn't even have a Wikipedia page to outperform Joe Biden by 8. And then going into 2026, we really only see one candidate has publicly expressed interest. He was the U.S. ambassador to New Zealand and Samoa. He's really the only one because Chris Sununu did decline as the former governor. So we see here, not much to say. For Republicans, I think Alaska is going to be likely, even if Mary Patola runs, because ranked choice voting and all that stuff. Montana could get a little bit competitive because Democrats have some decent candidates in that state. It's also a marginally Republican state because Donald Trump barely won the state by over 15 in 2020, but by 2024 he won the state by about 19.9. That Kansas is a left-turning state, and in 2020, Barbara Bollier, wait, so she won. This was a very high-spent race. She won her race by 11 points. A lot of people thought this could be very competitive, but she also was the first Senate election where a Democrat won Riley County, and this was the first ever election Johnson County voted for the Democrat. So we see this state is definitely trending to the left. You could make the argument where Laura Kelly Shields, she said she was not going to run, so this race is automatically probably not going to be competitive. Um, Next few states: Texas, Iowa, Ohio, Mississippi, and then South Carolina. So that really only leaves in Florida. Leaves a four upstates, and Republicans, just with their likely states, they already get to 51 seats. So realistically speaking, not a very competitive election in the Senate. Iowa, the Republican primary out, Joni Ernst. She has a questionable track record among Republicans. You have Joshua Smith, who is the former chair of the Libertarian, which, if a Libertarian defeats Joni Ernst in a primary, what does that say about how much the people like her? And A lot of people thought this would be a very close election in 2020, and then she won by about 7. So she barely underperformed Donald Trump. I'm tired. I woke up at 12:30. I also slept at 1, so that might be why. Ohio's interesting because this is a special election to fill. First of all, we have to go back to 2016 where Rob Portman, he won his race in Ohio by 21 percentage points against Ted Strickland. He won a lot of competitive districts. And then by 2022, JD Vance versus Tim Ryan. You might recognize the name JD Vance. He is the current vice president elect and current president of the Senate right now. So, yeah. A lot of people said he was a very weak candidate, which, realistically speaking, a lot of people thought this race, it was a blue wave year, it could flip because apparently JD Vance was such a bad Republican. Um, and then everyone heard him speak during that debate, and it was probably an eye-opening moment for a lot of people. That JD Vance is a huge reason why Trump did decent in the Rust Belt, I would think, because he redeemed Donald Trump in that horrible, horrible debate performance we had. And we see here there's a lot of potential candidates. Frank LaRose, John Husted, like these Matt Dolan, Shane Tinkin, like the Josh Mandel, like we see all these candidates, they're all up there in the betting odds on who Mike DeWine, the governor of Ohio, will represent and elect. And then we see Greg Landsman to be a decent candidate. He has name recognition, but he's not going to run if Sherrod Brown runs. And only Tim Ryan has publicly expressed interest, but even then, it's probably still going to be a likely margin. Unless Republicans nominate Josh Mandel, then it probably be lean. Okay, Florida and Texas. Texas, honestly, Cornyn, he's definitely seen as a rhino, but in 2020, you have to admit, he did very good in the state. He won by 9.6, which isn't very good, but it's definitely better than Donald Trump's 5.6 majority. So we see, I don't really see very many Democrats who have said I don't think a single Democrat has announced they would run. Yeah, realistically speaking. But yeah, if Ken Paxton runs like it says here, Harris might get a little bit more competitive. Same diff with Florida. Pointing Marco Rubio. The only reason I see this state be competitive at all is if Marco Rubio, this was his old seat. He won by 16. He only won 9% of African American voters, but he also did win 56% of Latino voters, which is a larger part of the electorate. So if Matt Gaetz runs, probably be a little bit competitive. Ron DeSantis might appoint himself, honestly. And then Laura Trump did former chair of the Republican National Committee and daughter-in-law of Donald Trump. She did drop out of the race. Not that she was really in consideration. Well, she was, but not in a primary. She just wanted. Yeah, it was a whole situation. And then Jared Moskowitz, he did deny running. So now Democrats, they might even abandon this race. It wouldn't surprise me if they didn't try to run anyone in this race. Okay, so now we're down to 4 actually competitive races. Let's start with lean Democratic states. And I think Michigan and Georgia will be lean competitive races. Georgia, I know Brian Kemp, he might run. Do I want to put Georgia in the lean column? Nah, I'm gonna put North Carolina in the lean column. I feel a bit more confident in North Carolina. Well, actually, I don't really feel competitive, and I don't really feel like. Let me just put Maine in the lean column. Let's put Maine in the lean column. Michigan and Maine, the two M states. So Michigan, Gary Peters, he might either run or he might not run. Either way, it is a Democratic-ish year. Democrats have some decent candidates. If you take a look at 2020, this was the closest actual election to happen in that year by about 0.1%. So Gary Peters only defeated John James by a little bit. Take a look at its congressional map. Yeah. And then 2026, John James probably won't run again, if I'm being honest. No candidate has announced that they're going to run, and they don't even have a Wikipedia page for it yet. So I do think Democrats will hold on. stick it to Maine at the end. Tilt states, I do think North Carolina and Georgia will both be tilt. North Carolina, Roy Cooper, he is eyeing up a run. And we take a look at Tom Tillett versus Cal Cunningham. So we see, I don't think we can actually open how many votes he won by. We do the math. He only won by, let me do the math real quick. By just under 90,000 votes. And that was a Donald Trump won the ticket. And then we see here, only reason he lost is because he had all those scandals in early October. Okay, so we see that. All that. And then the congressional map doesn't even matter at this point because it was so gerrymandered anyway. We see here. And I believe I can't speak. I'm too tired for this. We see in 2014, Tom Tillis versus this was an incumbent. It was also a Republican plus 6 year. We see Tom Tillis barely beat Kay Hagan. So, and Roy Cooper is eyeing up that bid because he is currently not serving in the United States governorship because he was term limited. Mark Robinson, he did decline, so thank God for him. He should be very happy. Laura Trump should not get the option to be appointed in Florida and then run in North Carolina. You see a lot of people endorsed Tontil. We see Wiley Nickel will be a decent candidate. He won in a very competitive House race back in 2022 against Bo Hines. Roy Cooper, he has announced publicly expressed interest, which that could be interesting. Roy Cooper is currently beating Tom Tillis. Yeah, in this poll that was taken a few weeks ago, right after the election, it was a Republican surge right after the election, and then would be Laura Cooper. Laura Laura Trump, oh god, this is proof I should end the video soon. I can't speak. Georgia, same diff. John Ossoff, he's a decent candidate. He unseated David Perdue, only by 1.2%. But if he can get the Atlanta metro area to work and come out, we see Atlanta definitely shifted towards him. But Perdue is just such a bad candidate. So we see he is the most vulnerable. We see, unless we see a bunch of decent candidates and we see some horrible candidates. Geoff Duncan would be I'd say decent candidate. Rich McCormick, once again, he'd be. These are good examples of good candidates. Republicans should nominate good candidates, not bad candidates like they've been doing for the last 2 years. David Perdue, horrible candidate, horrible, horrible. Once the insider trading scandals got leaked, and he was an incumbent anyway, and he did win by a decent margin before. And there was also Kelly Loeffler. We don't nominate Kelly Loeffler again. She lost by 2.1%. Brad Raffensperger, good candidate. Might probably alienate a bunch of Trump Republicans. Marjorie Taylor Greene is not a good candidate, and she should not be anywhere near the primary in this election. She would lose this race. She tried to get Joe Biden impeached within like 3 weeks of him being in office, which she doesn't look that stupid now, I guess. But back then, she looked very stupid for saying it. And Maine. Okay, I'm gonna get so much hate for this, but first of all, we've seen bipartisanship catch up in so many Senate races throughout the 21st century. I was gonna make a YouTube short on it actually, but then stupid CapCut wouldn't work. Yes, I use CapCut. We listen and we don't judge. So we have to go back all the way to 2006. In 2006, we saw. Actually, we have to go to 2010. That's when we really started seeing it how it happened based off incumbent lines. We saw Arkansas, North Dakota. We saw those two races flip to being on partisan lines. North Dakota, especially, because John Hoeven got 78% of the vote. His predecessor, Brian Dorgan, got 68% of the vote. So we saw a huge shift. Like 30, like we saw a 80% shift. So we see here, North Dakota, those states shifted. 2012, we saw Nebraska and Massachusetts as well as Maine. 2013, we didn't see much then. 2014, this was a runoff election. Cassidy, probably going to get primaried out in 2026, defeated former incumbent Landrio. 2018, we saw a lot in 2018. We saw Nevada, we saw North Dakota, the other race in North Dakota. We're to think that in 2011 that there were two Democrats serving in North Dakota. Missouri, same story. Indiana, Florida, we see all these races. Georgia, Pennsylvania, and then by 2024 we saw Montana, Ohio, Pennsylvania. We're seeing partisanship catch. Maine probably won't be an exception, especially if Janet Mills runs, then or Jared Golden, because those are very strong candidates. Collins does not have the best record. I do think in a hypothetical matchup between the two, Susan Collins does lose. So we see here Democrats flip two seats in North Carolina and Maine and carry all their other seats, but still lose control of the United States Senate. Goodbye. I'm too tired for this. I want to go sleep.